There is a whole domain of controversy and discourse about the role of mushrooms in human culture, because it was noticed by Gordon Wasson in the 1950s that there are two kinds, invariably, there are two kinds of cultural attitudes toward mushrooms. One is called mycophilic. And if you want to know what mycophilism is, go to Russia, go to Poland, go to Czechoslovakia, where people have hundreds of words for mushrooms. Several holidays a year are set aside to collect mushrooms. Children are named after mushrooms, so forth and so on. The Slavs are into mushrooms. Well, then if you want to know what a mycophobic culture is, go to rural England, where there are no mushrooms. There are only toadstools, and don't touch them, please. They're highly poisonous. That's the general English attitude toward mushrooms. So Gordon Wasson wrote about this all through the 50s and 60s, and he decided that you all probably have seen, if not the real thing, a plaster cast or depicted in schmaltzig European illustrative style, the famous mushroom of fairy tales, the red mushroom with the white dots. Well, that is Amanita muscaria, and it grows in a symbiotic mycorrhizal relationship to spruce and birch trees, and is used by the shaman of the Irkut language group and the Amur River Basin. And now it just happens that those people in the Amur River Basin were the first people studied by the new science of anthropology when it wanted to study shamanism. By chance, this was. And so ever since, the science of shamanism, whether we're talking about the shamans of the Amazon Basin, Central China, South India, or Tierra del Fuego, has had to labor within the categories created by the people who studied the shamanism of the Amur River Basin. And the use of the Amanita muscaria was tremendously overstressed by Wasson, I think. He wrote a book called Soma, the Divine Mushroom of Immortality, in which he argued that Amanita muscaria was the Soma of the Rig Vedas. You may not know it, but the Rig Vedas are largely these hymns composed in the Vedic phase of the Hindu religion to a mysterious intoxicant, Soma. Nobody knows what Soma is, but much scholarly ink and blood has been shed on the question. And Gordon Wasson argued that it had to be Amanita muscaria, and made a case which impressed some people and not others. The most damaging evidence against him was, it's hard as hell to get off on this stuff. And when you finally do get off, the experience is extremely ambiguous. I mean, shivering and salivating and thinking you're losing your marbles is not my idea of the ecstatic ascent to the presence of the pleroma. And a lot of other people thought so too. So then there was lots of hassle about, well then, it did seem that Wasson had secured the case that the Vedic hymns were about a mushroom. That was his breakthrough. But his mistake was he got the mushroom wrong and then created an entire false cultural history based on this error. And, this, I'm not interested in flaying you with my theory, but if you're interested, it's told in the book Food of the Gods. Because, as I mentioned this morning, I think psilocybin was the catalyst that triggered the emergence of self-reflecting consciousness in human beings. And so my mushroom story is not a story of a subarctic toxic mushroom cult that carried itself into India along with the Indo-European invasions. My story is an older story about a mushroom that contained psilocybin and flourished in the grasslands of Africa and was present as nomadism slowly evolved into the domestication of cattle, and as we talked about this morning, the suppression of gender dominance with the addition of psilocybin in the diet, created a partnership society that existed up until the invention of agriculture, and climatological change made the mushroom difficult to obtain. And at that very critical juncture, after perhaps 50,000 years of mushroom-induced suppression of hierarchical dominance patterns, the withdrawal of the mushroom from the human diet allowed the old pattern to reassert itself. But at this point, we had language, we had agriculture, and what did we do? We quickly organized monotheistic religions, city-states, warrior castes, god kingship, the world of the lash, and the god king, basically. And we are the unhappy inheritors of that circumstance to the present day. And that's why our situation is so bizarre and why we are so neurotic, if you will. It's because human consciousness evolved in an entirely different cultural milieu than we now exist in. It evolved in a world in which the Gaian logos was absolutely real to every man, woman, and child in the society. And I believe that the tendency in the hominoids to form monogamous pair bonding was eroded by the presence of psilocybin because it promoted an orgiastic sexual style. And the social consequences of that were that men could not trace lines of male paternity. And so you have an intense impetus toward collective bonding in a group like that, because the children are our children, the children of the group. The nuclear family is, I think, a somewhat maladaptive fragmentation from all of this. And this is important for us to understand because we have practiced a neurotic style of culture for a long, long time. It has permitted the conquest of matter, but that now is done. I mean, once, hydrogen fusion, you can put it in a bottle at Yale, well, then you've been there, done that. And now we have to swing the thing back into balance. The tools that we acquired on the journey of the prodigal son through the world of matter, you cannot redeem the moral cost of that unless those tools are brought to bear to now redeem the planet. I mean, if there is any justification for history at all, it must be that it secured a longer evolutionary life for intelligence on the planet. And, as far as how the psychedelics fit into this in the individual scheme, psychedelics are not flashlights into the chaos of the Freudian unconscious. They are tools for mathematically unpacking your mind into a higher dimensional space. In the Newtonian and print-created social space that we're walking around it, you are like a self-extracting archive that hasn't self-extracted itself yet. And then you take psilocybin and you self-extract and unfold. And because think about it, I mean, I'm very serious about this. Think about what the shaman's functions are in the classical Paleolithic model. The shaman's functions are to predict weather, to anticipate the movement of game and enemies, and to heal disease. Well, now, how could you do those three things? Well, the answer is, if you could see into next week, that would be helpful. That would allow you to do all three of those things. predict the weather, see the movement of game and enemies, and make very astute choices about who you accepted as your patients. You see? And so what we see here is that there's a kind of selection going on for an ability to triangulate complex systems into the future. And I think that now the reason the psychedelic experience is so compelling to me is because I took psychedelics for years with the question, what is it? And then I never could understand what it was. And people said, this is the wrong question, and on and on. But finally I realized, I see what it is. It's everything. It's, that piece of doggerel, I saw eternity the other night, an endless golden ring. Well, that's it. You just rise out of the Newtonian spatial plane and you look back, and there is eternity hanging in space like a galaxy. And that's what the psychedelic experience is a sectioning of.